I am an old man now. My hair is white, and my hands are weak. I sit by the window every day, watching the trees outside. The wind moves the leaves softly, and I remember my past. Memories come like waves. Some make me smile, and some make me cry, like an old song playing softly in my mind. I had a wife. Her name was Sarah.
She was kind and beautiful, with a warm smile that made every day brighter like the morning sun. We had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. I worked hard every day to give them a good life. I wanted them to have what I never did, to know comfort and joy that was sometimes out of my reach when I was young. My wife cared for our home, cooked delicious meals, and helped the children with their schoolwork. Our home was full of laughter and love, a sanctuary built on simple moments and shared dreams. Years passed and our children grew up. They went to school, made friends, and started spending less time with us.
I understood they needed to explore the world, to find their own paths, but it still made my heart feel a little sad, like a quiet room after a party. Sarah would always tell me, "They will come back. They love us." I believed her. Her words were always a comfort. But one day, Sarah became sick. She stayed in bed for many weeks. I took care of her, cooked for her, and sat by her side. I told her stories to make her laugh, just like I used to tell the children, but she was too weak. Her eyes, once so bright, now held a gentle weariness. She looked at me and whispered, "Take care of the children. They need you." My heart broke into 1,000 pieces, like a fragile vase falling to the floor. The house, once so full of life, became quiet and lonely, a hollow echo of what it once was. I hoped my children would stay with me and fill the silence, but they were busy with their own lives, chasing their own dreams, as young people must. They came to visit less and less, their visits becoming shorter, their calls more infrequent. One day they sat with me, their faces earnest but distant, and said, "Father, you cannot stay alone. It's better for you to live in a home for older people. You will have company and care." I wanted to say no, to hold on to the last fragments of my old life, but I saw no other choice.
My heart hurt with a quiet, heavy pain, but I nodded and went with them. Now I sit here alone. The days are long and the nights are cold sometimes. I think of Sarah and the life we had together. I ask myself over and over, did I fail as a father? Did I do something wrong to make them drift so far? But there are no answers, only the persistent, quiet hum of silence. This place is a quiet retirement home. It is clean and peaceful. There are other older people here, sitting in their chairs, lost in their own thoughts, like ships sailing on their own private seas. Some of them talk to me, sharing bits of their day, but most of the time I sit alone, watching the world pass by. The nurses are kind. They are gentle with me, but they are busy. They bring me food, give me medicine, and sometimes offer a soft smile, a small moment of connection in the routine. And the deepest question I had was, how did I get this moment? How did I get a Critel experience where I got a blit through in a band I wanted to be in when I was a kid, and that song was one of the favorite songs to me that I like the most. And now I'm fulfilling that dream, and couldn't I still can't like understand it where it came from, but it's not a negative thing to say. I just want to comprehend and be thankful for.
The light paints the sky with colors, soft pinks and fiery oranges, and for a moment, just for a moment, I feel a deep peace, a quiet calm settling over me. Then the day truly begins, and I feel the emptiness again, like a breath held too long. I think of my children. Where are they now? Are they happy? Do they ever think of me, even for a fleeting moment? I remember the times I carried them on my shoulders, their small hands clutching my hair, their laughter like bells in the air. We went to the park, played games until the sun went down, and laughed until our sides hurt. I worked long hours, my hands tired, my back aching, to buy them new clothes and shiny toys, wanting to give them everything I could. I taught them to ride their bikes, pushing them gently, then letting go, watching them wobble and then soar. I helped them with their homework, their small brows furrowed in concentration. My hands were tired, yes, but my heart was full, overflowing with a father's love. They were my pride, my joy, my everything. But now they are far away. They call me sometimes, their voices hurried, distant. "How are you, Father?" they ask, a quick question tossed into the air. And before I can truly answer, before I can share the quiet rhythm of my days, they say, "We're busy, Father. Take care." I understand. Life is hard, and they have their own families now, their own busy lives to live, their own stories to write.
But still, I wish they could visit more. Just a little more. One day, a kind nurse, noticing the quiet sadness in my eyes, gave me a small, plain notebook. She said, her voice soft and encouraging, "Write your memories. It will help you feel better, like sharing a secret with a trusted friend." At first, I didn't know what to write.
My hands shook slightly as I held the pen, unsure of where to begin, what words to choose after so much silence. But then, slowly, the words started to flow, like a hidden spring finding its way to the surface. I wrote about Sarah, her soft voice, her warm laughter, the way she made our house feel like a home. I wrote about my children, their first tentative steps, their first precious words, their bright, innocent smiles that could melt any worry away. The notebook became my friend, my quiet confidant. Every night I wrote before I went to sleep, pouring my heart onto the pages. It felt like I was talking to someone, sharing my pain and my enduring love, whispering secrets to the paper. I hoped that one day my children would read it. I hoped they would understand how much I loved them, how much I still do, and perhaps understand the quiet ache I carried. But sometimes a different thought creeps in, a tiny seed of doubt that grows in the quiet.
I wonder if they will ever read it. Maybe they are too busy to care, too caught up in the whirl of their own lives. Maybe they will forget me, just like they sometimes forget to visit. These thoughts make my heart heavy, a familiar weight settling in my chest. But I keep writing. It is the only thing I can do, the only way to keep the memories alive, to keep my love flowing.
The days in this home are all the same, a gentle, unchanging rhythm. Breakfast at 8, lunch at 12, dinner at 6. Between meals, I sit by the window, watching the world, or I go to the small garden. The garden is small, but it has flowers, roses, daisies, and bright tulips, each one a tiny splash of color in my quiet world.
Sometimes I watch the birds that come to the garden. They sing their simple songs, full of life, full of a freedom I sometimes long for. And I listen, allowing their gentle music to fill the silence for a little while. This quiet life, this reflection, this silent journey of the heart, it makes you think deeply about connection, doesn't it? About how we build bridges, and sometimes how those bridges slowly crumble, or even more quietly, how they might be rebuilt in ways we never expected. And this is where our story truly deepens, where my own reflections on my children and Sarah's memory connect with a more universal truth. A truth that English with Rambo wants to share with all of you. Because learning English isn't just about new words, it's about understanding the stories of life, the quiet whispers of the human heart that resonate across all cultures, across all generations. You see, a well-told story provides a gentle map guiding us to understand words like loneliness, not just from a dictionary, but by feeling its quiet ache, by imagining it like an empty chair or a forgotten song. It makes hope bloom like a tiny sprout pushing through cold earth, felt deep within your own chest.
For those of us who have lived many seasons, we know that life is a tapestry woven with threads of joy and sorrow, of connection, and sometimes of solitude.
So, let me share another story now. A story that might feel familiar. A story about a woman, much like myself in her quiet moments, who learned that sometimes the most profound connections are woven not in grand pronouncements, but in the soft, steady rhythm of simply being. Let us call her Elara. Elara lived in a small, quiet house with a garden that was her pride and joy, much like the one I watch from my window. Every morning she would wake with the sun, make a simple cup of tea, and sit by her window, watching the world begin its day. The birds were her first visitors, singing their morning songs in the old oak tree outside, just as they do for me here.
Elara's life was quiet, filled with routines that brought her a gentle comfort. She watered her flowers, read her books, and knitted soft blankets for the local shelter, each stitch a silent prayer, each loop a small act of love. She loved the feel of the yarn in her hands, the rhythmic click of the needles, turning simple threads into something warm and useful for others.
But even with all this calm, a small, persistent ache lived deep within her heart, a quiet sadness that whispered to her sometimes, during those quiet moments when the tea cooled in her cup, or when the last rays of sun painted the sky gold. It was a loneliness that came from a missing piece, a shadow of a past that had never quite settled.
She carried it not like a heavy burden, but like a faint echo, a melody half remembered, a familiar feeling for anyone who has ever known the quiet hum of longing. This ache, this quiet shadow, was tied to her son, Liam. Many years had passed since they last shared a true conversation, a deep exchange of thoughts and feelings, like two boats that had slowly drifted apart.
The reasons for their distance were not clear, not even to Elara herself, not anymore. Time, that gentle healer and sometimes sly forgetter, had blurred the sharp edges of the initial hurt, leaving behind only a dull, persistent throb, a silent question in her heart. It wasn't a fight with loud words or angry shouts that had driven them apart. Oh no. It was something quieter, more insidious, more common than we often admit. A misunderstanding, perhaps, a difference in expectations, a path taken by one that the other couldn't follow. Over time, the silence grew, stretching like a wide, empty field between them, each year adding another layer of distance, another layer of unspoken words.
This feeling of disconnection, this scarcity of shared moments, is a profound kind of loneliness, isn't it? It's not just about being physically alone, but about feeling unheard, unseen by someone who once knew your heart so well. Elara often thought of Liam, wondering what he was doing, if he was happy, if he ever thought of her. She pictured him in her mind, a young boy with bright eyes, then a strong young man with a determined stride. Now she only had old memories and a hopeful, silent prayer for his well-being. The house always felt a little too big for just one person. The second bedroom, once Liam's, stood quiet, its door often closed, like a chapter in a book she hadn't dared to reopen. Dust motes danced in the sunlight that filtered through the curtains, illuminating the stillness, the silent evidence of time passing. Elara would sometimes open the door, step inside, and simply stand there, breathing in the faint scent of old wood and forgotten dreams. She wouldn't touch anything, just observe. The small wooden toy train he once loved, now sitting on a dusty shelf. A faded poster of a superhero on the wall. Each item a tiny fragment of a past that felt both incredibly close and impossibly far away, like a photograph blurred by tears. She didn't dwell on the past with bitterness, but with a quiet longing, a wish that things could have been different, or perhaps simply could be different now. She yearned for connection, not just any connection, but the unique, irreplaceable bond with her son. She had often imagined the conversation they would have, the words that would finally unlock the years of silence. She pictured herself saying exactly the right thing, or him saying the right thing, and suddenly all the hurt would melt away like snow in the spring sun. This was the common way to think about it, wasn't it? That words held the key, that explanations were the glue. But as she grew older, as the world moved faster around her, she began to sense a different truth, a whisper that suggested another way. Perhaps the words had built the wall, and now something else entirely would build the path across it. Then one afternoon, a small, colorful drawing arrived in her mailbox. It was folded neatly, and on the front, in shaky, childish letters, it said, "For Grandma." Elara's hand trembled slightly as she opened it. It was a drawing of a house with big red roses in the garden, just like hers. And next to the house, 2 stick figures, one tall, one small. Above them, a bright yellow sun. At the bottom, a name, Lily. Lily was Liam's daughter, Elara's granddaughter. Elara had never met Lily, only seen pictures. This drawing was a small miracle, a tiny but strong bridge reaching across the long, quiet silence. She sat down at her kitchen table, looking at the drawing. The colors were bright. The house was happy. A gentle warmth spread through her chest, like a tiny spark in a dark room. Lily, her granddaughter. Liam must have sent it, or at least encouraged it. It was not a letter. It was not a phone call. But it was something. It was a sign, a whisper across the years that the bridge was not completely broken, that perhaps, just perhaps, there was still a way to walk across. Elara held the drawing close. She felt a mix of feelings, joy, surprise, and that familiar ache. But now it had a new friend, hope. For many days, Elara kept the drawing on her table. She looked at it often. It made her think. It made her remember a simple truth. Family is important, more important than any misunderstanding, any sharp word, any long silence. She imagined Lily drawing this picture, She imagined Liam helping her. It took courage, Elara knew, to send even such a small message, to take that first step, to extend a hand. And now Elara felt a small push in her own heart, a push to take a step too. But what step? How? After so long, the silence felt like a thick wall. How do you break a wall with just a whisper or a drawing? It was a frightening question, but the desire to connect, that deep human need for family, was stronger than her fear. She knew that the greatest courage is often found not in grand, heroic acts, but in making the very first small step, especially when you are afraid. She decided then and there that she would not force it. She would let the quiet lead the way, if it chose to do so. She would challenge her own expectations and let life weave its own design, rather than trying to force a perfect ending. She would embrace the counterintuitive idea that sometimes doing less, saying less, might in fact achieve more. This quiet surrender to the unknown was a profound shift in her perspective, a new way of approaching a deeply personal and painful situation. A few days later, he was there. Not at her doorstep, not yet, but she saw his car parked outside the old family house down the street, the one he was supposedly looking after. Her heart gave a little jolt, like a bird fluttering inside her chest. He looked older, of course, with streaks of gray at his temples and lines around his eyes that told tales of a life lived. She watched from her kitchen window as he carried boxes, his movements familiar, yet subtly different. The old feelings of longing and uncertainty mingled within her. It wasn't the dramatic reunion she had once dreamt of, but something far more muted, more ordinary, more real. She didn't rush out, didn't call his name. Instead, she continued her routine, watering her plants, letting the silence hold its breath, accepting this quiet return. This was her revolutionary act, not seeking, not demanding, but simply allowing. The first real interaction came a couple of days later. She was in her garden, kneeling to pull weeds, when she heard footsteps on the path. She looked up. Liam stood at her fence, a few feet away, holding a small box of fresh eggs. "Hello, Mother," he said, his voice a little gruff, a little uncertain, like someone testing the water. "The hens at the old place are laying more than I can eat." Elara's throat tightened. It was the first time she had heard his voice directly in so long, a sound she hadn't realized she had missed so deeply. "Hello, Liam," she replied, her own voice softer than she intended, a gentle whisper. "That's very kind of you." He placed the box on her garden wall, not moving closer, not yet. She stood up slowly, brushing dirt from her hands. They stood there for a moment, the silence growing, not quite comfortable, not quite painful, but simply present. The words that had accumulated over years, the explanations, the apologies, the questions, they all hung unspoken in the air, a heavy, invisible curtain. Yet in that small gesture of the eggs and the simple exchange of greetings, a tiny thread had been cast. It was not a bridge, not even a strong rope, but a delicate, almost invisible thread, hinting at a connection that had not entirely broken, even after all this time. It challenged her assumption that a powerful statement was needed to mend. Sometimes a simple offering was enough to begin.
This was the unique lens, the unexpected truth, that sometimes the quietest gestures speak the loudest, bridging divides that words alone could not. Over the next few days, these small, silent encounters became a quiet pattern. Liam would walk past her house on his way to the market, and they would exchange a nod, a small wave.
Sometimes Elara would be in her garden, and Liam would stop by the fence, commenting on her roses or the changing weather, his voice a little less gruff each time. Their conversations were always brief, always about simple external things. "Nice day," he might say, looking up at the clear sky. "Yes, lovely and warm," she would reply, a small smile playing on her lips.
No deep dives into the past, no attempts to address the chasm between them. Elara found herself observing him, trying to read the stories in his eyes, in the way he held himself. He seemed more weary, perhaps, but also more settled, like an old tree that has weathered many storms.
She noticed the way he always straightened a loose brick on her garden path when he passed, a small, unconscious gesture of care that spoke volumes without a single word. She didn't thank him, and he didn't expect it. It was just a quiet understanding, a shared acknowledgement of presence.
One afternoon, he found her struggling to lift a heavy bag of soil for her prize-winning hydrangeas, her weak hands unable to manage the weight. Without a word, he stepped over the low fence, took the bag from her, and placed it exactly where she needed it. Their hands brushed for a fleeting moment. A spark, not of electricity, but of simple human warmth, passed between them. A silent affirmation. He didn't stay, didn't speak more than a soft, "There you go." And then he left, just as quietly as he arrived. Elara stood there, her hands still tingling, a strange mix of emotions swirling within her. This wasn't the dramatic resolution she had always envisioned, the tearful embrace, the long-awaited words of comfort and forgiveness. It was far quieter, far more subtle. And yet, she felt a loosening in her chest, a faint easing of that persistent ache she had carried for so long. She realized then, with a profound clarity, that the revolutionary act was not in the words they spoke, but in the unspoken kindness, the simple act of presence. It was a challenge to her ingrained belief that only verbal communication could bridge such a gap. Sometimes actions, however small, spoke a language far more ancient and powerful, a language of care and silent understanding that transcended years of quiet distance. One evening, Elara was sitting on her porch swing, watching the last of the sunlight fade from the sky, painting the clouds in hues of orange and purple, a masterpiece of nature. She heard footsteps again, and Liam appeared at her gate. He carried 2 mugs. "I made some coffee," he said, his voice softer than usual, a gentle offering. Thought you might like some." Elara's eyes widened slightly. This was new, a deliberate act of shared companionship. She simply nodded, a small smile touching her lips, a silent invitation. He walked up the steps, handed her a mug, its warmth seeping into her hands, and then sat down on the other end of the swing. They sat there, side by side, sipping their coffee, watching the stars begin to prick the darkening sky, each point of light a tiny promise. The only sounds were the distant chirping of crickets and the gentle creak of the swing, a symphony of quiet moments. No words were spoken about the past, no attempts to define their relationship, no explanations offered or demanded. Yet, in that shared quiet, a different kind of conversation was unfolding. It was a dialogue of presence, of shared space, of simple, unadorned humanity. Elara looked at Liam's profile, silhouetted against the deepening twilight. She saw not the boy she had lost, nor the man she had grown apart from, but simply Liam, her son, sitting beside her. And in that moment, the weight of years, the expectation of a grand reconciliation, began to lift, like mist in the morning sun. It was counterintuitive, she thought. All her life she had believed that healing required confrontation, a painstaking unraveling of past hurts. But here, in this quiet, shared moment, she found something else entirely. She found a kind of peace that didn't depend on perfect understanding or articulated apologies. It was a peace that grew from acceptance, from the simple act of being together, without agenda, without judgment. It was a revolutionary concept for her, a paradigm shift that moved beyond the need for spoken closure to the profound comfort of unspoken connection. The next morning, Elara felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. The quiet ache in her heart was still there, a faint memory, a reminder of the journey, but it no longer consumed her. She made her tea, her movements a little more sprightly, her heart a little more full. She looked out at her garden, seeing it not just as a source of comfort, but as a place where new things could grow, even from old soil, a symbol of renewed hope. Liam was still in town. Their silent encounters continued, gradually becoming more frequent, more comfortable. Sometimes he would come over in the morning, and they would sit on the porch, not talking much, but sharing the newspaper or watching the birds. Once, he helped her prune an overgrown rose bush, their hands working near each other, a shared task weaving a gentle thread between them, without a single word about the past. She understood now that life, especially in its later stages, was not about erasing the past, but about learning to live with it and to build new pathways forward, even if those pathways were quiet ones.
Liam might not ever speak of the past, and she might not ever ask him to. But they were together, in this moment, sharing coffee, pruning roses, simply being. And in that simplicity, Elara found a profound sense of reconciliation, a peace that was deeper and more enduring than any spoken apology could have offered. This was her profound insight, her challenge to common assumptions about mending fractured bonds. The bridge had been built, not with words, but with the silent language of love, care, and quiet acceptance, brick by shared moment, connecting two hearts once separated by an unseen wall. And it was, for Elara, truly revolutionary. So, my dear friends, as you learn English here with Rambo, remember the old man sitting by his window, and remember Elara and Liam's story. Their journeys teach us that simple words, simple actions, and even simple silence can hold the deepest truths.
This isn't just about grammar or vocabulary. It's about connecting with the universal language of the heart. Understanding that life's most challenging puzzles often find their solutions in the quietest moments, in the smallest acts of shared humanity.
It teaches us about the resilience of love, the enduring strength of family, and the profound beauty of reconciliation, not always through grand statements, but often through humble presence. What part of Elara's journey, or even my own story, made you feel the most? How did it connect with something in your own life?
Share your thoughts in the comments below. Even with just a few simple English words, your feelings matter. If this story touched your heart, please give us a thumbs up, a gentle like, and subscribe to English with Rambo for more stories that don't just teach you English, but also speak to your soul. And next time, we'll explore another beautiful story, a tale about finding courage in unexpected places, a journey that shows us how even the smallest step can lead to the greatest adventures. Thank you for being here, for sharing this quiet moment with me, and for embarking on this wonderful journey of learning and connection.